Have you ever felt like a system was rigged, like the rules were unfair?
Oh, we've all had those moments, right? Where we question authority, the fairness of it all. Gladwell uses this example of the Troubles in Northern Ireland to show how important legitimacy is for keeping order. The British Army, they were trying to stop the violence between Catholics and Protestants, but they had some pretty hard tactics.
Welcome to Witter. Who Has Time to Read? The podcast that brings deep dives for busy minds. Listen to AI hosts Jane and Dane and get ready to unpack the world's most captivating books in just a fraction of the time. Whether commuting, working out, or just squeezing in a quick break, we deliver key insights, thought-provoking themes, and takeaways you can carry into your day. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Plus, use our links in the description to purchase this book. Your support helps us bring more engaging book discussions to you. Listen and follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Who has time to read? You do, with Witter.
All right, so today we're going to kind of flip the script on how we think about winning and success. Get ready to kind of dive into the surprising world of underdogs. Have you ever felt like you're going up against like a Goliath? Like the odds are totally stacked against you.
You're facing that impossible challenge.
Yeah, like you're destined to fail. But what if I told you that those apparent disadvantages could actually be like secret weapons? That's what we're going to explore today, diving into Malcolm Gladwell's David and Goliath. It's a book packed with fascinating stories and research that really turn our ideas about success upside down.
You know, it's funny how we get so caught up in this rigid way of thinking about what's an advantage and what's a disadvantage. This deep dive really challenges those assumptions and makes you see how what seems like a weakness can actually become your biggest strength.
Exactly. And speaking of flipping the script, what better place to start than with the ultimate underdog story? David and Goliath. You know, the one with the shepherd boy and the giant. Hey.
I mean, we all think we know that story, but there's so much more to it than meets the eye. Imagine you're in the Valley of Elah, this super tense standoff between the Israelites and the Philistines. Now, these Philistines are not to be messed with. We're talking battle-hardened warriors from Crete, and they're determined to conquer this crucial mountain ridge that would basically split the Israelite kingdom in two.
So it's like the ultimate game of capture the flag, but with way higher stakes.
Exactly. And to break the stalemate, they decide to settle things the old-fashioned way, a one-on-one duel. And that's where Goliath comes in, this absolutely massive giant. I'm talking at least 6'9", decked out in full bronze armor from head to toe. He's got a javelin, a spear, a sword, the whole arsenal. Basically a walking tank.
That is seriously intimidating. Can't even picture facing someone like that.
Oh, it'd be terrifying. But then, out of nowhere, this young shepherd David volunteers to fight for Israel. Now he's small, agile, and instead of picking the typical weapons of war, he goes for a sling.
A sling? Seriously, that's like bringing a knife to a gunfight, right?
That's what most people would think. But here's the thing. Slinging was a seriously sophisticated and deadly art. Think of it like facing a major league pitcher, hurling a rock at your head at 150 miles an hour. That's the kind of stopping power a skilled slinger had. They could hit targets accurately from crazy distances, like up to 200 yards away. And some historians even believe sling stones were more feared than arrows in battle.
Yeah. Gladwell even says that a ballistics expert calculated the impact of a sling stone at that distance. It was equivalent to a modern handgun. No wonder the Romans had those special tongs just for removing sling stones stuck in their soldiers.
Exactly. So David choosing the sling wasn't some naive move. He was actually using a hidden advantage. Because Goliath, with all that heavy armor, was built for close combat. He was totally unprepared for a projectile attack from way out there.
It's the perfect example of what Gladwell calls desirable difficulties, right? Have you ever noticed how sometimes the toughest things you go through actually make you stronger? Like David not having traditional weapons forced him to find a different solution. And in the end, it was a much more effective solution.
Absolutely. And that idea of facing and overcoming challenges to discover unexpected strengths, that's really at the heart of what we're talking about today.
So think back to a time when you had to overcome a limitation. Maybe you were super shy as a kid and had to develop strong communication skills to succeed. That's compensation learning in action, right?
That's a great example. It's like, you know, when life gives you lemons, you make lemonade, but for skills and personal growth.
Exactly.
And you know what? That actually brings us to another super interesting concept, the inverted U-curve.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What's the inverted U-curve all about?
Well, it's the idea that more isn't always better. Like you might want to think twice about signing up for that extra course or adding more people to your team, or even making that additional investment, because sometimes once you hit a certain point, it can actually start to work against you.
So it's like there's a sweet spot, and if you go past it, things can backfire.
Exactly. One example Gladwell uses is class size. We tend to think smaller classes are always better for learning. But research shows that while gigantic classes are obviously not great, super tiny classes can also be less effective.
Really? That's surprising. I would have thought smaller classes would be the ideal. Why wouldn't that be the case?
But it comes down to dynamics and engagement. In very small classes, students can feel like they're constantly under a microscope, and there might not be enough different perspectives to spark really interesting discussions.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like trying to have a debate with only two people. You need more variety to get those intellectual sparks flying.
Exactly. And this principle applies to other areas too, like parenting and wealth. Gladwell tells this story about a Hollywood mogul who struggled to teach his kids the value of hard work. Why? Because they'd never experienced any real hardship.
That's interesting. It's like that saying, shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. The wealth built through hard work in one generation gets squandered by the third because they haven't faced the same desirable difficulties.
Exactly. They miss out on those challenges that build character and resilience. It's a good reminder that sometimes having too much of a good thing can actually be a disadvantage. Makes you think about the downsides of having it too easy, you know?
Totally. And it's not just about like money or stuff. This applies to like our emotional resilience too, which kind of brings us to this idea of remote misses. I found this part super interesting.
Yeah, so during the London Blitz, when the city was getting bombed night after night, people were obviously terrified at first. But Gladwell makes this interesting point. As they survived each bombing, they actually became more resilient, way more than they thought possible.
It's like you're facing your fear over and over again, and eventually it loses its power over you.
Exactly. Overcoming that terror kind of created this feeling of exhilaration and this sense of courage, like they could handle anything.
It's crazy how our own view of ourselves can change, like how much we think we can handle. It shifts when we face those fears head on. And that exhilaration you mentioned, doesn't that almost fuel even more courage, making us more likely to face those challenges?
That's exactly what Gladwell argues. It makes me think about the story of Fred Shuttlesworth, the civil rights activist. He's survived a bombing, came out physically unharmed. But that experience, it had to have strengthened his resolve, his courage, his determination to fight for justice.
It's like experiencing a close call, a remote miss. It kind of recalibrates us, gives us this deeper sense of purpose.
Right, gives you a new perspective on what truly matters and what you're capable of enduring. Let's switch gears for a bit. Let's talk about something that's typically seen as a huge disadvantage. Dyslexia.
Okay.
Would you ever think of dyslexia as an advantage?
Honestly, not really. I've always thought of it as a major learning disability.
That's how most people see it. But Gladwell introduces us to these two incredibly successful people, David Boies and Gary Cohn. Both achieved amazing things despite severe dyslexia. Their struggles with reading actually forced them to develop other skills, like exceptional listening and memory. Perfect examples of that compensation learning we talked about.
So they turned what most would see as a roadblock into a detour that led them to develop these unique strengths.
Exactly. David Boies, he became this renowned lawyer. He was famous for his ability to absorb and recall tons of information during trials, a skill he honed because he couldn't rely on easily reading through documents.
So he basically turned it into a superpower out of necessity.
And Gary Cohn, he became president of Goldman Sachs. He developed incredibly sharp social intelligence, observational skills, because he had to navigate a world not designed for his learning style. He learned to read people, a skill that's, essential in finance.
Those stories are so inspiring. They show how what we think of as weaknesses can become advantages. In the right context, they can even lead to extraordinary success. Let's talk about power and authority for a second. Have you ever felt like a system was rigged, like the rules were unfair?
Oh, we've all had those moments, right? Where we question authority, the fairness of it all. Gladwell uses this example of the Troubles in Northern Ireland to show how important legitimacy is for keeping order. The British Army, they were trying to stop the violence between Catholics and Protestants. But they used some pretty harsh tactics that, backfired.
So even though they had the power to enforce the rules, it didn't work because people didn't see those rules as fair or legitimate.
Exactly. Gladwell points out these 3 key things about legitimacy: fairness, voice, and predictability. People are way more likely to accept authority when they feel like they're being treated fairly, when they have a say in how things work, and when they can reasonably predict what's going to happen based on their actions.
It's like even if you have all the power in the world, if you don't use it in a way that people see as just and reasonable, you're going to create pushback and conflict.
That's a great way to put it. True authority isn't just about force. It's about building trust and this sense of shared responsibility.
Let's talk about a case where even well-intentioned policies can have unintended consequences. The story of Mike Reynolds. He was the one who championed California's 3 strikes law after his daughter was tragically murdered.
Such a heartbreaking story. You can completely understand why he wanted to do everything he could to prevent other families from going through that kind of loss. But the law, even though it was meant to protect people, it had some pretty far-reaching consequences, ones that went beyond its original intent.
Another example of the inverted U curve, where too much of something, even a good thing, can have negative outcomes.
Exactly. The 3 strikes law. It increased sentences for repeat offenders.
Yeah.
But a lot of people argue that it led to way more people in prison, disproportionately affecting certain communities, and creating this ripple effect on families and society as a whole.
It's a complex issue for sure. It makes us think about the limits of punishment, and the potential for unintended consequences, even when a law is created with the best intentions.
Right, and sometimes the most powerful response to tragedy isn't about punishment at all. It's about forgiveness.
And that brings us to the story of Wilma Dirksen. Her daughter, Candace, was also murdered. But unlike Mike Reynolds, she chose forgiveness. She advocated for restorative justice instead of harsher punishments.
Wilma Dirksen's story is so powerful. Her Mennonite background, their history of persecution, their strong belief in pacifism. It all played a huge role in how she responded to her daughter's murder.
It's hard to imagine the strength and resilience to choose forgiveness over revenge, especially after such a loss. It really speaks to her faith and her belief in a different kind of justice, one focused on healing and reconciliation.
It's a powerful reminder that there are many ways to respond to trauma. Sometimes the path less traveled, the one that goes against our instincts for revenge, can be the most transformative.
Let's talk about a truly inspiring example of underdog strength and resilience. The story of André and Magda Trocmé and this village, Le Chambon-sur-Lignon.
During the Holocaust, this tiny village, tucked away in the mountains of France, became a beacon of hope. They sheltered thousands of Jewish refugees, defied the Nazis, risked their own lives to protect others.
Seriously, a tiny village standing up to the Nazis makes you think, what would you do in that situation? Would you have that courage to do what's right, even when it's dangerous?
Their courage was incredible. Most of them were devout pacifists. Yet they risked everything to stand up against such evil. They saw the humanity in those fleeing persecution and chose to act, even though it meant putting themselves and their families in danger.
It shows you that true courage doesn't come from physical strength or power. It comes from a deep commitment to your values and a willingness to act on those values no matter what.
And their marginalization, their outsider status, it actually became their strength. They weren't bound by those same social and political pressures, the pressures that might have stopped others from taking such a stand.
It's a testament to what ordinary people can do when they come together, when they refuse to be controlled by fear. Even in the darkest times, hope and humanity can prevail.
Yeah, it's a reminder that heroes can come from the most unexpected places, and that real strength often comes from compassion and sticking to your values. And it kind of goes back to Gladwell's main point. We often get those battles wrong, the ones between underdogs and giants. We focus on the obvious advantages, size, strength, resources, but miss those subtle but powerful advantages. The ones that come from going through tough times, from being underestimated, from having to fight for everything.
We get blinded by the giant's shiny armor and miss the agility, the ingenuity, the sheer grit of the shepherd boy standing up to him, right? And that mistake, that not seeing things from the underdog's perspective, can really mess us up.
Absolutely. It makes us underestimate resilience, dismiss people who don't fit in, and think that brute force can solve everything.
Gladwell's book really challenges us to rethink those assumptions, to see things differently, to see that strength can come from unexpected places, and to appreciate the unique things people bring to the table when they've had to fight harder, adapt faster, and think differently.
And he has so many fascinating examples in the book. Remember when we talked about slingers being surprisingly effective against heavily armed opponents?
Yeah.
Gladwell mentions this old military manual from the 1800s that stresses training soldiers to use slings. It says even armored soldiers were often more annoyed by the round stones from the sling than by all the arrows of the enemy.
It's amazing how something so simple, almost archaic, could be so effective. It speaks to the power of ingenuity and adaptability, qualities you see a lot in underdogs.
Exactly. And remember that economist who studied all those lopsided conflicts?
Yeah.
He found that when the weaker side used tactics no one expected, their chances of winning went way up. It seems like refusing to play by the stronger opponent's rules is a key strategy for underdogs.
They flip the script, make the giant face something totally new, right? Like T.E. Lawrence of Arabia, and the Bedouin warriors in World War I.
Oh, yeah. The Bedouins, with their knowledge of the desert and their mobility, they were able to completely disrupt the much larger, better-equipped Ottoman forces. Lawrence saw their unique strengths and adapted his strategies to use them.
He took their so-called weaknesses, no formal training, limited weapons, and turned them into advantages. It's another classic David and Goliath story, the underdog finding the giant's weak spot. Shows that flexibility, adaptability, and breaking the rules can be critical for success, no matter what you're doing.
Yeah, it's about finding your own unique advantage, even if it doesn't look like what everyone else thinks is an advantage. We see it in education, too. We talked about the downsides of small classes. But Gladwell also looks at how certain learning environments can stifle scientific talent.
So it's not always about being in the most prestigious or competitive place.
It's exactly. A sociologist studied students at top universities and found something interesting. The ones who were passionate about science at the start were actually more likely to abandon STEM fields if they were surrounded by extremely brilliant peers.
So being a big fish in a small pond might actually be better sometimes, especially in areas where you need confidence and a willingness to take risks.
Yeah, that's the idea behind the big pond effect. It suggests that comparing yourself to the very best all the time can be discouraging, make you doubt yourself. Sometimes a less intense environment gives you more freedom to explore, experiment, and develop your own strengths.
It reminds us that finding the right fit, whether it's a school, a job, or even a group of friends, is crucial for developing your talents and feeling a sense of purpose.
So, as we wrap up this dive into David and Goliath, remember, we all have potential for greatness, even, and maybe especially, when we're facing impossible odds.
Yeah, what if the things that make us different, the challenges we've faced, the limitations we've had to adapt to, what if those are the sources of our greatest strengths? That's something to think about.
For sure. And next time you're facing a giant, a huge challenge, an obstacle, or even an ingrained assumption about success, take a step back.
Yeah.
Really look at it and ask yourself, what am I missing? What hidden advantages might be there, and how can I use them to do amazing things?
That's all for our deep dive into the world of underdogs and their unexpected advantages. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep challenging those assumptions about the world.